Okay, good morning, everyone. We are coming back into session, I guess is what we would call that. We're going to just jump right into things.
I need to call roll.
Oh, yes, sorry, calling roll first.
Dr. Solcito? Here. Dr. Grant?
Here.
Dr. Noland?
Here.
Ms. Pulowski? Here. Ms. Prado?
Here.
Dr. Bradbury?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Fantastic. Okay, so today we have a lot of business items to get through. So we'll start with my president's report. A lot of things that were on this are kind of covered through other avenues, but I'll just kind of run through what I've been doing as your president. In September, I attended the DCA leadership meeting, and Ms. Gear went over the DEI training that was discussed kind of at length, and it was really some good discussions there. We also had a presentation from Tribal Council. Ms. Lamar, the DCA Tribal Liaison, was discussing future events, including a summit and developing language for licensing tribes. She had also mentioned land acknowledgments, which is where I realized that we hadn't been doing that, and she helped me craft the wording for the land acknowledgement. So I really am grateful to her and her work that she's doing and the help she provided. During that discussion, Jessica asked about partnering with tribes about unlicensed activity, and she and Ms. Lamar and Jessica, I think, are going to work together on that, and it sounds like it's going to be discussed at a tribal chairman meeting coming up, or I'm not sure if that's already happened. We also discussed virtual meetings and the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act, and this was, I think we discussed multiple times throughout our meeting yesterday, but I think we have the option of those 4 options that were discussed that we have to use starting January 1st. I think we're going to be able to continue doing this mixed option, but it does, I believe, require that we have a majority of members present in order to have meetings in this way. Is that correct, Jessica? Yeah. So we encourage in-person participation when possible, but this really allows some latitude in emergency situations where people can't attend, and still allows the public to participate virtually, which I think has just really improved our participation and our outreach. So that's great. There was a comment during the meeting that I just thought I would bring to you guys today, which was that we were asked to remind everyone on the board, not specific to this board, this was just a general reminder to the leadership of all the boards, to remember that we're here for public protection. And when board members are asking for statutes and regulatory changes that appear to be for licensee advocacy, it isn't really appropriate, and people notice. So just remember, if you're, if it seems like you're advocating for the licensees and not for the consumers, just remember we're here for consumer protection. We also had a number of legislative efforts that we participated in as an executive team. As you know, the AB 1399 went through. I think we had, maybe it was 2 meetings since the last, at least 1 meeting since the last, our last July meeting. We met with the authors, and then some letters were written, and I felt like that was a great collaboration, and it was exciting when we were able to change our positioned to support, and I was really thankful that the antibiotic amendment was added. I think that was really a win. I wasn't expecting it, and I was grateful that it was added. But I feel like that whole relationship, instead of it being an adversarial relationship with the shelter community and the groups that were behind the bill, that relationship I think is warming up, and at least we are talking and having good conversations now. It sounds like that was the case with the subcommittee, the MDC subcommittee as well, and that's really encouraging. For SB 699, I know, or 669 rather, Jessica mentioned that she had, that we had met with the governor's office, and I was really disappointed. I think it's my first time going through this process, but I was like, oh, this meeting went really well. I think they're going to veto it, but no, they didn't veto 669. So I won't get my hopes up as much in the future, perhaps, but still we'll work hard to try and advocate for our consumers and pets in California. On the national stage, we all heard about AAVSB, so I won't go into too much detail there, but I attended that with Jessica and Dr. Nolan, Dr. Nunez, Dr. Sullivan, and Kathy Bowler, and I'm glad we were there. I do think that it's an eye-opening experience, and we'll probably get into some options we have in our strategic planning session. We had a meeting with the CDFA, which hasn't been brought up, and this was regarding some rendering concerns with animal rendering and phenobarbital in carcasses. We met with Dr. Fernando Umayam, Andrew Halbert, and Paula Batarse to discuss barbiturates in rendered livestock, mostly cattle. Branch Chief Paula Batarse, she sort of debriefed us on the scope of rendering oversight in California, and she provided us with background of some ongoing issues. So we used to have a lot of rendering facilities, and there's some newer stringent FDA regulations that have developed a zero tolerance for the presence of barbiturates in carcasses. And this has led to shutting down many rendering facilities, and that is a concern. So there's only 3, I believe now, that are taking cattle. There used to be, I think, over 20. So that's a big concern. They are trying to get the word out as to how to distinguish cattle that have been euthanized with barbiturates from cattle that have not, and they have a whole process. It's putting a big orange bee in a certain place at a certain size, and they've asked us for help in getting the word out, as well as, any ideas we might have, and also in helping when there are when there are deviations from the rules, our support in helping them enforce the regulations, and they're really they're more interested in education than enforcement per se, but they just wanted to partner with us and start the conversation. They are in the process of developing a formal rulemaking process to establish regulations surrounding this, but they really just reached out to to ask for our help. So we'll be, we've invited them to come to our April meeting in 2024 to give a presentation. We have collaboration with them on targeted outreach and education efforts, so materials, flyers, presentations, as well as I said, the future enforcement efforts being communicated and conveyed to us for further assessment and actions. So I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. Currently, it sounds like none of these facilities are taking horses. So if a horse is euthanized, they are having to go to, it sounds like, to landfills. Another issue they brought up, or not possible issue or mitigation that can be done is that people are euthanizing cattle with barbiturates mainly because of public perception, and there are some other more, or I should say that equally humane methods of euthanasia that are less acceptable, at least to they seem less acceptable to the public because they just don't seem as gentle, but they have been deemed equally humane, so there may be some education opportunities there. But that, to me, is it's a little alarming that we only have 3 rendering plants left, and the fact that they're not taking horses is also news to me and kind of sad. But in any case, that was it for the CDFA. We also had a meeting with the CHRB. Jessica, Dr. Solocito, and myself, we met with the Executive Director, Scott Cheney, and the CHRB Chairman, Dr. Ferraro, and we discussed the current situation, including updating them that Dr. Nolan and Dr. Grant were working with Jessica to develop a list of known and acceptable preventative therapies for horses. Jessica gave a little bit of her own history, which I think was really helpful, where she has a connection to racing that is a positive connection, and I shared my experiences on the racetrack as well, hoping to sort of bridge the divide that we have where I think there's a misconception by the CHRB that we're against horse racing when, neither of us are, that's for sure, So I don't know how, I felt like that was taken to heart. We just kind of discussed the timeline and history of how we got here. Scott Cheney was not the executive director at the time of the initial sort of complaints that were lodged and where the CHRB sent the complaints to us. So I think just clarifying how we got here, I hope was helpful. And we briefly discussed HISA and, how that's coming down the pipe. But it was, we kind of agreed to disagree on some things, but the dialogue, I feel like, was more productive and constructive probably than in the past, and I'm hopeful. I don't know how they felt about the meeting, but I felt encouraged by it, and I hope to continue to work with the CHRB and try and bridge that divide a little bit better. So I think Dr. Grant joining us has hopefully helped as well. So, and then my other actions really were some of the things that I've done on the MDC, which was participating in the CDFA, blood bank FAQs, complaint audit subcommittee, and then I attended the inspection webinar as well, which was great, and I'm sure we're going to hear a little bit about that in our meeting. So that's it. Does anyone have any questions?
I'd just like to say if there's any help I could be with the indigenous aspect, I've got some long history of, working with indigenous communities and stuff. So, yeah, I could do that.
That's great. Thank you.
Being a cowboy.
That's awesome. Thank you. I don't see Diane doesn't have her hand up. Yeah.
Can I just add, I also offer my help. I've been actively involved in the LA County RD, which is Anti-Racism, Diversity and Inclusion initiative for the past 3 years. And so if there's anything that I could help move the board into being more inclusive and, working with not just the indigenous communities, but, with like the diverse communities that we have.
That's great. I think maybe we can talk about that in one of our executive meetings on how to incorporate that and utilize your guys' your relationships and experience. That's fantastic. Thank you. Any public comment in the room? I don't see any. Moderator, would you open it up to public comment online, please?
Certainly. If anyone would like to make a comment on the report, you may either click on the hand icon to raise your hand, or you can click on the question mark icon, type the word comment into that text box and click send. And each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak with a 15-second warning. Are there any comments on the report? I do not see any requests for comment. And would you like me to close the public comment feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
All right. Ms. Pulowski, you are up. We're on agenda item number 13,
Yep.
Registered Veterinary Technician Report.
So, yeah, I don't have a report except for to say Happy Veterinary Technician Week, because I knew that our agenda already included so much RVT stuff that I felt it was overwhelming. So I really did, and I looked up stuff and I was like, it's too overwhelming. We are already inundated with RVT stuff, and I know that Jessica fought for us, and I thought that that was I appreciated all the work that you did, and I appreciate it. And so I think it goes for saying that speaks for all RVTs, so I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay. So we are moving forward.
We need to do public comment.
Oh, gosh, I'm sorry. No public comment in the room. Moderator, would you open it up online, please?
Certainly. If anyone would like to make a comment on the RVT report, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. You can look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment into the text box and click send. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak with a 15-second warning. Any comments on the RVT report? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're moving on to agenda item number 16, executive management reports, and we will start with Kim for administration.
Good morning. So I'll start with a staff update. Unfortunately, we had our licensing technician, Brandy Gutierrez, pass away suddenly on July 21st. Brandy had just started with the board in February of this year. She quickly learned all the tasks on how to process RVT applications and was providing really good customer service to our applicants and licensees. Brandy was a joy to be around. She always helped when we asked anything of her, and she did it with a smile on her face. Brandy loved art, rabbits, her family, and our staff had a very hard time with her passing. Several of us were able to attend her memorial, and we met her friends and her family, and we'll just miss Brandy a lot. In other news, we did hire our veterinary assistant controlled substance permit licensing technician position. We hired Heather Setterfield. She has previously worked at the Department of Fish and Wildlife and the California Bureau of Security and Investigative Services. So we are training and getting her up and running right now. There is the board's organizational chart that was provided as an attachment, with the exception of the vacant analyst and technician positions in administration. All positions hopefully will be filled by the end of next month. And just an update, we are working on transitioning to electronic records. The board is working with DCA's record imaging unit, and the goal is to digitize all physical licensing and enforcement files. This will make it easier and to accessibility for all files, and especially for those who are teleworking right now. And then we're using the board's retention schedule. The physical files would be purged once the digitalization has been confirmed. Once all the physical records are purged, the file rooms will be converted to additional office space that we desperately need. The transition is anticipated to be completed about August of next year. Do you have any questions about that? Okay. And then I'm going to invite our budget analyst, Veronica Hernandez, up for her presentation.
Thank you. And I'm sorry about your guys' loss of Brandy. Yeah. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for having us. My name is Veronica Hernandez, and I am the budget analyst with DCA Budget Office.
And I'm Suzanne Balkis, and I'm the acting budget manager.
All right. I want to thank the board and executive staff for allowing me a few minutes to present the board's 22-23 actual fund condition. So the documents that are on page 4 and 5 of Agenda 16A are what I'll be discussing today. First, I'm going to start with the board's expenditure projection report, which is on page 4. The department was able to close 22-23 fiscal year in August, and this document that you're looking at shows where the board landed as the close of that fiscal year. When reviewing the expenditure report, the top half of the document is the board's personnel service expenses, followed by the board's operating expenses and equipment. The green columns are the prior year figures, which for that document is 21-22. The blue columns are budget for 22-23. And the orange columns are the actuals for 22-23, with also the remaining balance for the full budget, based off of the full budget. As we move to the end of the document, you'll see that the board had an appropriation of just over $7 million, spent a total of about $6.5 million, which creates a reversion to the board's fund for $789,000. Or about 11% reversion rate. The next document on page 5 is the board's fund condition statement. As a reminder, we're going to read this document from top to bottom, left to right. The left column is the board's prior year, 22-23 actuals. The board began 22-23 with an adjusted begin balance of $6.9 million. Collected close to $8.5 million in revenue and expended just over $7 million. The board ended 22-23 with just over $8.2 million reserve balance, which is about 12.4 months in reserve. The $8.2 million reserve then moves up to the top of the next column for the fund condition, which then begins our current year of 23-24. For current year, the board's revenue and expenditures are projected at Budget Act. The Budget Office is currently working on current year and budget year incremental adjustments, and we'll update these projections as we get closer to the release of the governor's budget, which is in January. The board's fund remains stable, projecting a healthy 10 months in reserve by the end of 26-27. Budget Office will continue to monitor the board's revenue and expenditures. We'll report back to the board, as always, doing monthly expenditure projections as we close each fiscal month in the current fiscal year. Currently, we'll, just as a side note, I'm working on FM3, so that's where we're at right now with FM3. I'll be presenting that to Jessica shortly, hopefully. A few things to note on the fund condition is it is just a snapshot in time. One of the main factors that drives expenditure increases in future years is a result of personnel service adjustments. These general salary increases, such as employee compensation, retirement, rate adjustments. So the Budget Office always includes an ongoing 3% incremental increase to expenditures to the fund condition statement for those out years. Fund condition does not include increased license or enforcement expenditures, which could also create additional costs to the board in out years. And lastly, I'd like to note that the board, that if any future legislation or unanticipated events could result in the board's need for additional resources, which would increase the pressure on the fund as well. The board office will continue to monitor the board's fund condition statement and keep our line of communication open, as always, with the board's executive staff. Again, I'd like to thank you for welcoming me today, and if you guys have any questions.
Thank you so much, Veronica.
Yes.
Was it Sarah?
It's Suzanne.
Suzanne, sorry. I was like, I need to write her name down. Thank you guys for coming. It's nice to have such positive reports. I think it was a few years ago now that it was quite a different story. Thank you, Jessica, for all of the hard work, and thank you, team, for all of your hard work in improving efficiencies, and really it's impressive that we have these sorts of numbers in the face of an increased staff and, I mean, in increased numbers of cases. I mean, all of it is you would think that we would be finding ourselves in the opposite situation. So it's a testament to all of your hard work, and I just want to say thank you, and thank you for your clear presentations. So when it goes into the 11% reverts to, what was it? I'm sorry, the terminology.
That's okay.
If we were talking about veterinary medicine, it'd be different.
Nope, that's fine. That's fine. So that the 11% is your reversion rate. So that's basically what the fund is. The board is saving based off of what they are budgeted to expend, but what they actually expended. So they say that 789,000 is the balance left from the budget. So basically 11% savings. Right, and from full budget. I feel like I ask this question all the time, but where does that go? That goes into a fund. So we just have that there if we know. Okay. So because we're doing, our team has been so efficient, and our actual expenditures are lower than what the budget is. Is our budget going to be lowered next year? I don't know. Do you have an answer for that?
I don't think it will be lower, because with the employees' comp and retirement and all of these adjustments, it does not seem like it's going to be lower.
Okay, good. I know how sometimes these things can, like, you do really well and they're like, okay, great, you don't need as much money. Dr. Nolan.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Just to help me understand, I think on page 2, there is a revenue report that is for year-to-date. I'm assuming, what year-to-date is that? Is that like the end of the third quarter, or is that?
That says, I'm sorry, that's fiscal month 13, so that's The actuals.
That's the
That's
actual,
actuals
okay,
as well.
thank you.
Yeah, so I think all of it is just from
It meant
FM13
actuals.
actual.
Okay, thanks, just following.
Yes, of course.
I don't see any other questions. I don't think there's anyone in the room going to ask a question. Moderator, would you open it up to our online audience, please?
Certainly. If anyone on WebEx would like to make a comment on the administration report, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand, or you may look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment into the text box and click send. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak with a 15-second warning. Are there any comments? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, guys.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Can I just make a statement real quick? while they're leaving?
Sorry.
I just remember a few years ago when it was a very painful process to raise the caps and to increase the licensing fees, especially for the registered veterinary technicians. So in light of this, I just would like to encourage us to continue to consider at some point an option of reducing the RVT fees. I know that there's a lot in the budget and a lot to be done as far as investigation and enforcement, but just a reminder that the licensees, especially the registered veterinary technicians, it's a heavy burden, I think, for them right now.
Yeah, I think we lowered those already, right?
Yeah, so there was a point in time where we had to raise all fees up to the statutory cap, and then through our sunset bill, we actually lowered the fees for the RVTs. I'm not saying that's not something to consider in going forward, but I do want to just point out that, again, that fund condition is just a point in time, and even though right now it's projecting us to have 10 months in reserve by the end, I think, of 26, 27, currently we have 7.5 staff that we are absorbing out of the blanket. Budget change proposals are not public information until if and when it's included in the governor's budget. But hypothetically, if we wanted to make any of those permanent and secure permanent funding for it, that wouldn't be reflected in the fund condition that you're seeing today, and it would have a definitely bigger impact on that fund condition. But it's always been my goal to keep lowering fees for all of our licensees. I'd love to do that, but it's something that we're closely monitoring.
I think my comment was following Dr. Bradbury's idea of, the budget being lowered. I would think that before we even considered that, we ought to think about the licensees. And I also wondered, it looks like Matthew's position is a limited term. Is that also something that we need to consider in the budget, or?
Yeah, so a couple things. So there would be no situation where the budget is automatically reduced because you didn't spend it. In order to reduce it, you have to go through another budget change proposal to reduce it. So that wouldn't happen without us knowing about it. When it comes to the Deputy Executive Officer position, we are absorbing that. It is a limited term because we're paying for it as a blanket. You can only have it as a limited term. So hypothetically, if I did a budget change proposal to make that permanent, again, I wouldn't be able to discuss it, and it wouldn't be reflected here.
Thank you.
Okay, those are good comments, and I do like keeping that on the radar if possible. I think that's great. I think after we get all of the staffing up, and then I'm sure our complaints will go up even more. But in any case, keeping that as on the radar always, I think, is a good idea. Kim, I think you're up next. It's agenda item 16B, examination and licensing report. Yeah.
So we have a guest from ICVA, Elizabeth, and on your memo, there's a link. That's okay. There's a link to ICVA's 2023 annual report for licensing boards that was sent out to everyone. I invited Elizabeth from ICVA to come and present and give an overview of that report.
Morning. Jessica, do you need me to share my screen, or should I just speak to the report that is in front of everyone?
Yeah, Elizabeth, moderator, if you don't mind giving Elizabeth presenter rights so she can share her screen and scroll through the 2023 report, and then board members can ask Elizabeth questions as she goes.
Certainly, and you should have a share option on your screen now. Perfect.
All right, fantastic. So good morning, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me well and see the shared screen. First thing I want to say is I hopped on right about the top of the hour, and I just want to kind of give kudos, of course, to the AAVSB for this reminder, but also Dr. Bradbury for the reminder that the purpose of the licensing boards, and then of course of the licensing exam, first and foremost, is protection of the public. I was yesterday visiting students at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. It's a 2+2 program with Iowa State University College of Veterinary Medicine. And something I always try to spend some time on is the fact that while there is certainly a lot of misconception around the purpose of the licensing exam, and some folks just think it's, you know, the worst evil thing ever. I'm used to that, but I try to instill a sense of pride in our students and candidates that they are even eligible to sit for this test. And then also that the test is meant to protect the public, and that should give them a sense of pride and hopefully a little bit of self-importance to know that they are able to take this test and participate as a legally practicing veterinarian. So just wanted to take a minute and say that. But once again, good morning. My name is Elizabeth. I'm a veterinarian. I'm the Director of Veterinary Outreach with the International Council for Veterinary Assessment. For those of you who are aware, we have several assessments within our portfolio, but of course the largest and probably the one that you want me to comment on the most is the North American Veterinary Licensing Exam, aka the NAVLE. So I'll just kind of briefly, again, briefly, that's what Jessica said. So I'm going to follow through with that, go through our 2023 annual report for licensing boards for you guys. And highlight some of the things that I think that you guys are going to want to kind of keep in mind and discuss moving forward. One of the biggest things I think that we reported on this year, we want everyone to be aware of, is a pretty significant increase in candidates who are taking our exam to begin with. Before we talk about pass rates and all that come with that, it's always important to think about the number of individuals that are taking our exam, and also planning for the future. So we had an overall 33.3% increase in candidates in the past 5 years. But maybe even more impressive is roughly a 17% increase in candidates between the 2021-2022 testing window and the 2022-2023 testing window. So something to keep in mind whenever we're looking at these numbers is that in 2022 to that 2022-2023, that testing window included the University of Arizona College of Veterinary Medicine, their inaugural class. That was the first class that was able to sit for the NAVLE from that institution, as well as expanded class sizes among many of our AVMA accredited institutions. And we're also aware of increased licensure numbers in Canada. Just overall, more individuals are taking our exam because more individuals are going through veterinary school. This also correlates directly with data that we have from the American Association of Veterinary Medical Colleges. Last thing I'll say on this, again, I'm a forward thinker. I'm a big, I like to zoom out and think about what's coming down the pike, like you guys are, especially as we're discussing budgets. The 2023-2024 testing window that will be starting next month will include Long Island University's inaugural class, and the 2024-2025 will include Texas Tech University, their School of Veterinary Medicine, their inaugural class. A part of my job is to look closely at the new schools that are currently in the accreditation pipeline and the schools that are becoming established to see, okay, what are our numbers going to be in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? And we do anticipate even more larger increases in those candidate numbers. So that's something that we are working internally to make sure that we are able to plan accordingly for those increased candidate numbers and make things as efficient as possible for our candidates, but also for our licensing boards as well. So moving down here, of course, to the ultimate performance passing rate, that's sort of the thing that everyone is most interested in learning from year to year. We did see a decrease from 2021-2022 to 2022-2023. The ultimate pass rate for AVMA accredited schools for senior students was 86%. So just to get ahead of this, I speak to this very often, and I know everyone is concerned and wondering about that decrease. We are trying to determine kind of what would be necessarily the root cause, but I also think we need to be careful because it's multifactorial. We know that most of the senior students who took the NAVLE in this testing window for 2022, 2023, we know that most of those students started vet school in the fall of 2019. So yes, right before the pandemic started in 2020. We also know that there are expanded class sizes. Obviously, the new school in Arizona, there's all sorts of different multifactorial reasons for this slight decrease. It's also worth noting that 86% is for both testing windows, for the November, December, and then the April testing window. So we know that senior students who took the NAVLE in the fall and maybe fell short, but then took it again in the spring, there was a pretty significant correction there. So that was good for us to see that the individuals who maybe once again fell short were able to get it on their second try. So that's good news, I think, overall. I want to scroll down here, make sure that you guys are aware of the extended exam completion options that we have for candidates. With these larger numbers, 17% increase in candidates, we want to make sure that our candidates have the ability to schedule their tests. So we've been expanding our testing windows, which is an added burden on our staff and our testing sitters to make sure that these candidates have the ability to take the test and complete the licensure process. In terms of NAVLE performance, again, kind of breaking this down even more, this is a lot of data, and I'm not going to go through it piece by piece. I just really, really want to call your attention to the sort of legend or the footnote at the bottom. This sort of 1, 2, 3 footnote here, this defines each of these groups. Please, if you're going to review the data and the tables that we have here, become familiar with each of those definitions there so that you can kind of fully see the entire picture, specifically as it pertains to criterion versus non-criterion group. Individuals, whenever we're talking about standard testing conditions, that means individuals with testing accommodations. Testing accommodations can mean anything from someone who has an ADA disability and needs maybe additional time or additional breaks, all sorts of different things, to a breastfeeding or pumping mother, right? That needs additional breaks for that. That's what non-standard or standard testing conditions can sort of include. So please keep that in mind as you're reviewing those numbers. Continuing to scroll down here, we are continuing to look at ways we can increase efficiency for our boards and for our candidates as candidates are working through NAVLE approval process for the application. Our hope is in the next 1 to 2 years in our application windows that candidates will not even necessarily have to choose a jurisdiction whenever they're applying. This is something that if you have heard any of our presentations or you've been with your regulatory board for any length of time, you are probably familiar with it. It's confusing to the candidate to have to choose a jurisdiction, the summer before they're graduating, 10 months before they're graduating. And so we're trying to figure out a way to efficiently do that. Many states have that process where they must select beforehand within their NAVLE application. Many states have that written into their Practice Act or into legislature, and that kind of ties their hands. So we're trying to figure out the best way to move forward with that to make things more efficient, again, for the candidate and for the licensing boards. I want to encourage you guys to be on the lookout. If you are curious about anything ICVA, boy, I have a treat for you. The FAQ section on our website has been recently revamped, and it is spectacular. I think, honestly, I'm gonna do a little humble brag here. I think it's the best FAQ section I've ever seen because we have a search function. It's broken down into sections. So I strongly encourage you guys to check that out. If you go to the main page of our website, icva.net, there's a FAQ kind of button off to the right. You can't miss it. So be sure to check that out. This is just a blurb on the fact that I'm doing outreach to NAVLE candidates regularly this fall. I have done several in-person visits. I've been to the University of Pennsylvania. I spoke about how I went to Nebraska this week. I do virtual presentations, webinars for schools and licensing boards like I'm doing now. Whatever it takes, whether I'm there in person or I'm sitting in the front room of my house like I'm right now, I want to make sure that everyone has the same access to the correct information as it pertains to the ICVA and especially about the NAVLE. We do have species-specific examinations that are available. Certain licensing boards will use these as needed for, disciplinary issues that may come up to make sure that the licensees are competent in certain areas. Something to keep in mind if you guys are in need of that down the road. Please be aware if any of you all are interested in serving as a volunteer. We have really spectacular opportunities for individuals. We especially love to have practitioners involved. As a fellow practitioner myself, I would love to see more practitioners participate. And what's nice is that now so many of our opportunities are virtual. So you can stay there on the West Coast. You don't even have to come over here to the East Coast if you don't want to for many of our opportunities. So I'm going to stop sharing and see, Jessica, I hope that covered the bases that you need me to with the report, but otherwise I'm ready and available for questions.
I thought you were pushing your things. I don't have any questions, but I wanted to thank you for being here and your presentation and your enthusiasm. It really makes me want to volunteer with your group. I really appreciate all of what the ICVA does. Any questions from, Dr. Nolan?
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And I just wanted to say that I was able to attend the deep dive that was presented at the AAVSB and was so impressed with the job that you folks do. Really, really impressive organization. I had one quick question that hopefully you can answer. If you look at the performance for the fall versus the spring, and I'm looking specifically at the Criterion group, the ones that are taking it the first time, do you usually see a fairly substantial dip in the percent of examinees failing from the fall to the spring? I mean, right here it looks like there's a fairly good dip at the Criterion group in the fall. There was 21.2% failing, and then it jumps up to 42.6. But I'm wondering if that's because perhaps the students that choose not to take it in the fall are the ones that are feeling a little less prepared anyway, or is that a normal trend?
Yeah, so that, again, multifactorial. So generally, yes, data shows that the further away that you get from that kind of fall first time test taker data, the pass rate also decreases, right? I also want you to recognize that the number of individuals who are taking it in the spring, we have quite a few institutions who are sort of in an asynchronous academic calendar who have spring cohorts, and that's becoming more and more popular with some of the new vet schools that don't necessarily start in the spring, they start in the fall. So maybe the first time some candidates are even eligible to sit for the test is actually in the spring. We're trying to figure out the best way to kind of share that data. I think that the criterion, not criterion is confusing for most people. But I will say that for individuals who are taking the NAVLE for the first time in the spring, it can be for a lot of different reasons, right? Maybe there were personal issues in the fall that prevented them from taking it in the spring. But the criterion group, the most important thing is that is first time test takers. But generally, yes, we do expect based on previous testing windows to see a decrease in the number of individuals who pass in the spring window. Yes.
Great, thanks so much.
Yeah, you're so welcome. And I think Diane has a question virtually.
Yeah, thank you so much for seeing that. Real quick, do we have demographic data?
Do we have demographic data in terms of
who was taking?
Great question. So a number of years ago, we stripped our demographics down to the bare bones. That was a legal recommendation because it's a risk, right? to have too many identifiers with our applications. Now we're kind of, things are shifting in the opposite direction and people want demographics, right? It's kind of a funny thing. Everything's, the pendulum. So we are so excited because about 4 years ago, we worked out an agreement with the AAVMC with their VMCAS application system to where we're going to be able to, for the first time this year, because that was 4 years ago, so we had to wait until everybody matriculated through the program, right? For the first time ever, we're going to be able to link individuals to their application data, right? Their demographics, where they went to school, stuff like that. To see like, okay, what trends are we seeing? What should we be aware of? So that is actively happening. And I would say in the next year to 2 years, you should expect to see some reports from us with the demographics in mind. But that is, it's so funny. It's like whenever I started at the ICVA in 2019, it was like, no demographics. We don't want any information. That's dangerous. No. And now we're like, yes, we need it. Where is it at? How can we get it? So I'm thrilled to say that is actively happening.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Great. Anybody else here? No. Thank you, Elizabeth. I will say that 86% pass rate, I think, is pretty good in my mind. Like, I don't know that it's a good test if everyone passes it. So
Sure.
for public protection. But I do see that the trend may be like what's the difference, that sort of thing.
Exactly.
But I immediately thought COVID, so it
Sure.
makes sense to me. Anyway, thank you so much, and I don't see any other questions, so have a great day. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. And on that note, I'll just say I'm married to an attorney. And whenever the pass rates came out for the 86% was made publicly known, my husband was like, "What is the big deal? Why is everybody spinning around in circles? 86% is great." And then I was like, "What?" And then I realized that bar pass rates are a little different. So yes, yay veterinary medicine. We're doing really well. So everyone have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your meeting. And thank you for everything that you guys do. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Okay, so now we are moving on to licensing. I think now you're up. I apologize. You looked scared the last time.
All right. So, well, she went over a lot of the NAVLE stuff, but we do have our examination statistics in here. Are the chart that you see there, basically it only reflects the national test rates for the first-time test takers. The NAVLE, it shows 71% pass rate, which was out of 5,902 candidates. The VT&E shows a 66.4 pass rate out of 8,733 candidates. And the VLE, which, as most of you know, is the California test, and that is the veterinary law exam. That's got a 90% pass rate out of 604 candidates. As far as licensing updates, last quarter the board conducted, continuing education. Last quarter the board conducted 66 veterinarian and 48 RVTs for CE audits. Of those, rough amount is 19% of the veterinarians and 10% of the RVTs were non-compliant. So corrective measures may include educational letters, citations, disciplinary actions, depending on the severity of the non-compliance. As far as board applications, we did see a decrease of roughly 7% when compared to Q1 of fiscal year 22-23. Veterinarian applications decreased 24%. University applications decreased by 70%. RVTs increased by 17%. Premises decreased by 28%. And the veterinary assistant controlled substances permits noticed a small increase of 6%, or decrease of 6%. As far as licenses issued, The board saw a decrease of roughly 16% when compared to quarter one fiscal year 22-23. Veterinarian licenses decreased roughly 17%. University licenses slightly decreased. I mean, it was 10 last time, 9 this time, so a very small amount. RVTs increased by 9%, and the HSPs decreased by 38%, and the controlled substance permits decreased by 20%. The licensed population, there's also a chart down there, which is just basically a snapshot in time as of October 1st, 2023. I can go over that if you want, or if you have any questions, I'm ready to answer.
Thank you for your report. Nice job. I guess I don't have any questions. I just am surprised. I don't know if no, I'm looking at this backwards yesterday. I think I did the same thing. Never mind. I don't see any questions. Okay, well, any public comments? There's none in the room. Moderator, would you open it up to the folks online?
Certainly. If anyone has any comment on the licensing report, you can raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, or you can click on the question mark icon, type the word comment into that text box, and click send. And each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak. Are there any comments on the licensing report? I do not see any comments. And Dr. Noland, was there something?
Yeah, I apologize. Kim, can you help me understand again? I know this has been explained to me before, but there's the veterinarian licenses, and there's the ones that are clear, the double asterisk, and then there's a category, there's a line right below it that says veterinary licenses California. And so if you go over to October 1st of 2023, there's 13,499 clear veterinarian licenses, and then California licenses, there's 11,420. So what's the difference there of those two again? I forget.
So I can help with that one. Those are the 11,420 are those individuals, those veterinarians who have an address of record in California.
Oh, got it. Okay. Okay. So the other ones are veterinarians. The discrepancy are those that have a California license but don't have a residence. At least you're not mailing to an in-state residence, right?
Their address of record is some other state other than California.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I always forget that too. And I'm like, oh, what is that? Okay. I'm sorry that we repeat ourselves. It's like we think we've learned this stuff, and then months go by, and then we reread it. And yeah, so I apologize if we, for me too.
We're getting older.
The same questions. It's, oh yeah, Dr. Grant.
Do you have an explanation of the 24% drop in the number of veterinary? Is it everybody moving out of the state, or no one wanting to move into the state, or?
Are you talking about the drop in population?
Veterinarian license decrease, the number of licenses for veterinarians decreased.
So you're talking about, because you said
Licenses,
20
registrations, permits.
I think it was in the beginning.
16%.
At the bottom of page 1.
Yeah.
Board applications also was another.
Yeah, this was applications decreasing. I don't think we have we don't know right now, and I wouldn't say, because this is just a point in time, and it's just a certain data point, so I wouldn't say anything yet. It's something that we're monitoring. If the decrease continuously happens and you start seeing the licensed population decrease, then you could see that there's an issue. But overall, the licensed population continues to increase. But we don't have a rationale for why now compared to this time last year, the applications decreased.
And then in the past, there's been other external things that have gone on that we later identified, like when school, certain educational changes, and so it'll be interesting. There may be
something to monitor.
Yeah, something to monitor.
Thank you.
I guess related to that, I wanted to ask, for those veterinarians licensed in California, but their record of address is like out of state, are we monitoring if that is increasing?
So it's actually showing the decline, right? So you see in October of 2021, it's at 11,536, had an address or record of California, and then it went slightly up to 12,000. Now it's back down to 11,000. So something to monitor. But I do want to point out that just because they have an address of record in California doesn't necessarily mean that they aren't practicing in California.
Thank you.
So not to belabor this, but it seems to me that the number of people who have an address of record outside of California but are also licensed in California has increased because the difference between 13,500 and 11,000 is greater than 13,000 and the 12,000. So I think it seems like there's more people that may be continuing to stay licensed and moved or something like that. But
so the comparison that you just made, if you're putting the two numbers together, the 16,416 and then the /13,499.
No, I wasn't.
Sorry.
I was subtracting 11,420 from 13,499 to give us the total number of people who are licensed in California but have addresses outside. Is that?
So the 13,499 are all of those who don't have a clear license. So they could have a delinquent status, inactive status. They just can't it's just, those aren't the California ones. The California ones are below that, the 11,420.
Okay, I guess, so what this says to me, so veterinarian licenses, star includes delinquent, inactive, and clear licenses. That would be 16,416. Double star, clear licenses, 13,499. So yes. That's the total number of clear licenses in California, regardless of their address of record. The second line down, veterinarian licenses, California only, is the one that has address in California. So subtracting 11,420 from 13,499 would give us the total number of licensees that do not reside in California and have a clear license.
Yes.
Okay, so that's actually increased over time, I think, which I don't know that matters. I'm glad we went through all of that. But maybe we'll remember what it means now that we've gone through this exercise. Sorry. Okay. Anyway, I know that you're probably really glad that you've spent weeks and weeks preparing for these few moments. It's like a wedding. And your presentation was wonderful, so thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Oh, I know that you guys put so much effort into these presentations and you're nervous and all of that. And so it's funny how it's just a few minutes and then it's over with, but it's really important information that you guys are providing us.
We do appreciate it. And we read it.
Yeah. So next up is our agenda item 16C, the enforcement report. And whoever wants to start.
I will start.
We have a team now.
We do. Okay, good morning. So since the last meeting, we talked about Kim interviewing for and being hired as the licensing manager. So as a result of that, her position was posted and we filled it internally with Kenneth Centerine, who was our inspection technician, and he handled all of our contracts along with working with the inspectors and providing support to all of them and all of us and all the SMEs. So we're excited to have Kenny start investigating cases. However, he was offered another promotional position, and so he is now no longer with the board. So that was, I know I started high and then I just came back down.
But we are currently working to fill his promotional position and his support position. So we hope to have those filled pretty soon. Unfortunately, that means Rob's team has a few vacant positions and working to fill those. Yes. So the manager position that was vacated by Matt was filled by another internal candidate, and that's Merlene. So Merlene has been with the department since 1999, and so she, in different capacities throughout the many years, her many years of service. So she just brings an abundance of experience and knowledge to the board, and she had most recently been working as a discipline analyst with Medical Board of California before she came to us, and she had also worked with Board of Vocational Nursing and Psychiatric Technicians. And she also spent some time over at Barbara Cosmo and Behavioral Sciences. So she has an abundance of experience there with different boards and professions. So we look forward to seeing her continue to grow here at the board. She was one of our enforcement analysts, and now she's, one of our enforcement managers. So excited to have her start with us in her new capacity. We did fill the vacant probation monitor position by promoting another internal candidate, and that was Miss Rachel McCowan. So she started with us in 2021 as a receptionist, and then she promoted over to the enforcement technician position in 2020, providing support to the probation monitors. So she's been assisting us in so many different capacities as, receptionist over at the front counter and assisting customers there and licensees and applicants, and then has just moved up in her short time here. So we look forward to having her fill her, new capacity as a probation monitor, so she's excited to be doing that. And we did also fill the vacant enforcement technician position in August with Ali Sultansada. So he's brand new to state service. He comes from the private sector, and we work at a software engineering company, so he's a very quick learner, and he's pretty much hit the ground running, so we're excited to welcome him with the board. And, of course, Rachel's position, we're currently working to fill that one as well. So we're always working to fill our vacancies, just as quickly as possible. Moving on to inspections, we did have the inspection webinar in July, and board inspectors, Dr. Howard and Jackie Smith, who is our inspector down in Southern California, they presented a detailed presentation going over all the inspection scenarios and all the different areas that we look for during an inspection. It was very well attended. We had nearly 300 attendees. We had a lot of feedback. It was very useful, very informative. There were a lot of interesting, good questions that came out of that, and so we expect to continue to hold the webinars, and we are tentatively scheduling the next one for January. And we are working with Public Affairs Office to create an informational inspection video that will include a mock inspection by one of our board inspectors at a local veterinary practice, so we are working on that. Dr. Michelle Griffin is one of our new inspectors. She's in the Gilroy area, so she'll be working in her territory will be the Santa Clara County and that surrounding area. She's been practicing at South County Animal Hospital for 20 years, and she was the AHA and OSHA coordinator for the practice there. She still is. And then also, earlier this month, we also had Ms. Vanessa Krenz from SoCal. She's going to be our inspector in the Central Coast area. So she's currently a practice manager, and she brings a great deal of experience in developing policies and procedures for, again, OSHA and DEA compliance in her practice. So with that, I will turn this over to Rob.
Can we ask some questions about that, just so that we can do it kind of in segments?
Yes, please, any questions?
If you don't mind. Sorry. First of all, thank you very much. Really, these webinars are just so amazing. So thank you so much for helping to organize those and put those out. It is really quite, I don't know, it brings me hope that there's so many people that are interested in them and wanting to improve their understanding of what's expected of them. There were so many questions that were just being fired off on the chat thing. I think and I think it was hard to keep up with those, right? So I think the next one, are we going to have like somebody just dedicated to the chat box and questions?
Yes, I think because we attended another training through DCA where they did something similar with when they were training managers. There was a lot of questions coming in the chat, but they actually took questions at the end. I think that we're going to move to that because it's a lot better, because when you're interrupting each time, it throws everything off. And if we're just doing it in the chat, the odds are there's a lot of people who are missing that in the chat too. So we're going to be doing questions at the end.
Yeah, I guess I was also like trying to read the chat and listen, and you know, so but it was like, wow, this is great. It was great. They were really good questions and just really good participation. I was just curious, did Dr. Griffin attend the webinar and then apply?
No, I don't believe so.
But we
did have a couple of other people apply that had attended the webinar, so.
That's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wonder how we can do that for expert witnesses, maybe.
We still need someone in Fresno, though. So.
Yeah.
Fresno people.
Yeah. I saw in there that you guys had done an outreach down there, but
we sent emails.
Haven't had any
on a Fresno, address of record location. No.
Oh.
Unfortunately.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, thank you so much, Patty. Are you up to, is it 16 now? How many inspectors do you have?
Well, we lost a couple.
Oh,
so
got it.
I believe we have 10.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But your full house would be closer to 16 or 17, yeah. And how many of them, I noticed that some are not actually licensed, veterinarians, is that right? How many are licensed and how many are not?
Well, they're all licensed, but we have about 4 veterinarians, and then the rest are RVTs.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just want to comment that the webinars, I had a couple of my team members on, and they really enjoyed it. So it's super helpful, and it provides so much information that we just can't get out otherwise. So I really appreciate it. Thank you for doing them.
Of course.
Okay.
I'll pick it up from there.
Pardon?
I was going to go through the rest.
Yeah, I don't know. Should we do public comment at the very end?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yes, please. Thank you.
All right, so the next portion of this report is just the intake. So we did see a slight increase in the cycle times and the number of complaints that needed to be assigned, obviously with the vacancy, but now that we have Mr. Sultan's out of there in the position, we expect that the cycle times are going to drop. We're a little bit over our goal of 10 days to assign the complaints, and I know that the number of complaints waiting to be assigned is steadily dropping as well. So we should be back to a manageable level. And typically, I want to see it to where we're looking at the complaints that are pending are all caught up, and then basically you're just taking care of the stuff that comes in from the prior day when you come in as intake technicians. Investigations, so it's actually going pretty well. I think we have noted on a few occasions that it's been steadily dropping. At the beginning of 22-23, we were at about 3,900, and now we're a little bit below 3,600, so it's steadily coming down. Obviously, it seems like an insurmountable amount, but slowly but surely. And I think one of the other things that I didn't note on here, but you can see in the stats, the month of August was a pretty strong month for case closures. It looks like we closed about 222, and then September, again, above 200, which is pretty strong. I mean, I think 222 is probably the most we've ever closed in a month. So we had a banner month last quarter. Let's see here. And it also looks like, as far as those closures go, we're looking at probably having another record year as far as how many we get closed at the end of the fiscal year. So we're looking at about 2,200, which is an increase over our previous record of last year. So it's going the right direction, I think. And then as far as just the incremental pieces of that, a little bit over half are less than 3 years old, and then 15% are less than 1 year old, the complaints that we've closed. And I think we've talked about this multiple times during the board meeting, but DCA has been very focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion, so there have been a number of training opportunities that board management, board staff has taken part in, and I think there are several training opportunities almost on a monthly basis, I think. So we, as managers, encourage the staff to go and attend those trainings, and we'll continue to do so. There is, I think, a lot of information that, especially when it comes to unconscious bias, that people just aren't aware of, and it's pretty eye-opening. Let's see here. We also, I think it was mentioned a couple of times, obviously, I think when it comes to the subject matter expert program, usually during the MDC it's mentioned, but we did have 2 of the roundtables since the last board meeting that we reported on, or I guess the last MDC meeting, and I think, just to echo what's been said, I think they've been very successful. I think the participation is always key, and during the last meeting, I know that we had Dr. Pollard, I think, was definitely contributing. He had some hypotheticals that he was running by some of the experts, and I think what you saw during the roundtable was that there wasn't, because I went over basically just the expert program and kind of the ins and outs and the contracting and invoice process and how that should look. And I think there might have been some experts who were a little apprehensive about, chiming in, and I think it helped having one of the experts in the form of Dr. Pollard asking some hypotheticals, because then it started to stir that discussion and started to get people involved. And I think that's really the key. That's the whole point of these roundtables, is an opportunity for the experts to communicate with each other, because I'm a layperson, so as much as I want to say, like, do this, do that, do this, when it comes to the actual standard of care, that discussion, I don't know. So, and I don't know what the experts have questions about, especially when it's standard of care. I mean, I can talk to you all day about enforcement stuff and administration stuff, but when it comes to that standard of care, it really, the experts talking to each other is key. So I think that was really great. And I know the prior subject matter expert roundtable, I think Dr. Gedkin had a presentation just about some of the tips that she did when she comes up with her report and how to approach that. And these are questions, once again, that I wouldn't be able to tell them. I mean, I can talk about how I would write a report, but when it comes to you're reviewing medical records and what you look for, you really have to be in the trenches and know from a licensee's perspective what that looks like and how you're going to translate that to paper, and then how you're going to, re-review that. And I know that there are definitely, when you look at some of those reports, some experts, you can tell that they're definitely very cautious about what they put down, and you can tell that they're taking their time to go over it and over and over it. And with other experts, I think it just comes naturally, or they don't get as apprehensive about things. And I think we want to find that happy medium, because I don't want people to be paralyzed by fear of, I don't know if I can put this here. And so that's why I always encourage them to reach out to me, text me, call me whenever you want. And that is a problem in itself, because I think some people are like, well, I don't want to bother Rob. And I've had experts say, well, you're so busy, you've got all these. And I'm like, I don't care. You can call me anytime, we can talk about this. But I think it's great that some of the veteran experts, and obviously the complaint audit subcommittee, I think, are willing to help with, connect that, where the licensees or the experts have questions that have to do with that standard of care. So hopefully these continue to be successful, but I think it really, the big piece of it is just that participation and the interaction between the licensees. So we'll keep facilitating those. Yeah, and it looks like, I think it's going over more the granular details of those roundtables, where we just went over some of the things just to be aware of when people are writing reports, how to approach the medical records, and things to keep in mind. Just, I think with anybody, it's just mainly reminders. I think there are some times where reports get written and they, maybe they divert from the format a little bit, and we say, okay, make sure this is here and this needs to be here because of this. This is why this is important. And I think we'll continue to keep keeping track of that. And the next section here is, oh, do you want to?
Yeah, can we stop there?
Sure,
and just, Dr. Nolan. Yes, thanks, Rob, I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
I have a quick question. When I was trying to read your summary of enforcement activity chart, it appears, and I may be wrong, but it appears that the far right column is not always year-to-date. Some of it looks like just a summary of the quarter. Is that right?
This should be year-to-date. Are you
like
seeing...
investigations open, it looks like year-to-date for the last 3 years was pretty high, and then it drops to 392 in 23, 24. That looks like it's an addition of the July, August, and September. Am I right? Yeah, so that's, okay. Do you have any idea of like how many open cases we have year-to-date, or is that what it looks like the third column is, it says 21, 23, but I bet it means 22, 23 up at the top.
Yeah, it should have been 22, 23.
Yeah, but we don't have is that the year-to-date for this year? Is that what?
So because this fiscal year is not finished yet, the 23, 24 is just going to include the July, August, September numbers year-to-date. Okay. So it's only capturing that quarter, okay. The first quarter.
Except the only one is the pending. It looks like the pending is year-to-date, I'm guessing.
Pending's always going to be the same because it's just where the last month.
Okay.
But yeah, so that year-to-date is going to be a rolling number until it gets basically cemented on June 30th at the end of the fiscal.
So I guess but where I was going with that is that, and maybe this is wishful thinking, but it almost looks like we're starting to flatten out as far as numbers of complaints. So that's what I'm kind of making sure I'm
potentially
towards there. Yeah.
I think that when we take a longer look at things and we look at those averages and we look at the spikes that we've had, it still is trending upward. That's the plan, and I think that's what we're looking at as far as the resources go and what we have to plan for, because the last thing we really want is to get caught off guard. And we have the evidence to back it up to where it is going up steadily. Now, I guess it's possible that it would plateau. Granted, we're only 3 months in, so I think a lot of times when you try to straight line numbers and you're 3 months in, it could wildly change. I think we had talked about it maybe a couple of years ago, Dr. Nolan, when you had noted, I think, oh, we have a lot of unlicensed cases here, and then it ended up just plateauing out, and then it became the average. So I think that's why, I like to just know what the straight line numbers are, especially when it comes to complaints received, but I don't want to totally say this is what it's going to be, although a lot of times with the complaints received, I think last year I said, oh, we're going to have this many, or this is what we're looking at, and we were a quarter in, and we ended up being like right there. So I guess we're doing the best we can when it comes to planning for those.
Yeah. Sure.
But yeah, I think that we'll probably keep going up. We keep getting the complaints.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I also want to keep in mind, too, where it says with the convictions, those also require investigation. So when you're looking at total workload for enforcement, you should be adding the 1587 and the 210, for example, from the 22-23, and that's the total that we report.
Sorry, about 2,000. Or sorry, not 2,000. Was that 1,900?
Dr. Solicito?
Sorry, 1,800.
I don't know that he's gotten to he hasn't presented that information yet, so we can certainly keep asking about it, but I think you still wanted to present, there was more, right, to present on this chart, or were you done?
Oh, I was gonna actually hand it over to Merlene just to go over probation, but you can feel free. I mean, if there's something, I don't want you to lose track of it if there's a question about the enforcement stuff.
So the pie chart and everything, is that still part of the presentation? I just, I was going to ask about the subject matter expert thing, and I feel like I interrupted you, and maybe that was a bad move.
No, please, yeah, let's talk about the subject matter expert.
I think Dr. Solicito had a question about the pie chart.
Just a clarification.
Sorry, sure. I just feel like I've messed up the order of things.
No, just for my own clarity and understanding of the pie chart. Mm-hmm. So we see here the complaints by violation type. So when you say negligence and incompetence, is this the nature of like how a person files it and calls it as negligence or incompetence, or is that something that the team discerns?
It's going to be a combination of the two. I think there are times, like Jessica mentioned yesterday, where they're going to say outright, they're going to use those legal terms and say they were negligent when they did this, they were incompetent when they did this. And I think that's not uncommon. They're getting more savvy with the legal terms. But there are definitely times where they'll say this is what happened, and the intake technician who's going through it can infer, yeah, that's obviously negligence. They're saying that they overdosed the dog here. They're not outright saying the word negligent or incompetent, but we can say that's where that's going to fall in that bucket.
So the criteria to discern negligence or incompetence, this is decided by the team basing it on how the case was filed. But I also, I just wanted to go back to what you said about the subject matter expert, that you say, well, there are times where I'm not comfortable in calling things out because you're not a vet. Mm-hmm. I guess my question is there any input from the experts in the discernment?
No, I think when it comes to intake, we can pretty much know that it's going to fall into that bucket because they're alleging that there's a deviation from standard of care. I think when I was talking about the experts and having that knowledge that I don't have, the layperson, it's more so when the experts are conferring with each other about how did you arrive to this. It's the details that you'd get through that training and experience of being a licensee. This is more so we can see it and we can tell, hey, they're alleging this happened, and it's pretty easy to say this is obviously a negligence type of situation. But when it comes to the training, it's going to, the expert's going to be able to say, well, when you see this type of overdose, what is all the, and I'm trying to think in jargon or how you'd say it as a licensee, but that's the difference there, is that that's what you'd get through that training.
Yeah, I don't mean to devalue the team's ability. I'm just saying that because seeing how big the percentage is of these types of cases, I guess the follow-up question that I have in the process, how do we knock off a bigger percentage of these cases? Are these becoming more a priority compared to others?
And I think that was something that we're trying to address, and I think with the complaint prioritization as one of our strategic plan items that was discussed before, and that's the challenge, is how can you have somebody at intake take an objective perspective to an allegation? And that's the challenge. I mean, obviously, death is a pretty easy one. Okay, the animal died. If we're going to say that's the highest priority, we can easily do that. But the other stuff that gets into the weeds where they say, well, they did this, sometimes that becomes difficult to know, okay, well, they're allowed to do that. But a lot of times you'll find that we'll also get complaints where they're not just saying one thing. They're saying multiple things. So maybe a couple of those, yeah, maybe they're not a violation, but there's something that we're going to be able to stick to, yes, there's a negligence or incompetence violation. It's very rare, I think, that we get complaints where they say, they did this, and that's it. They're writing a book about all the things that are wrong, and there's definitely one, if not several, allegations that we can put into that negligence and incompetence bucket. So it is, and I think I mentioned it, I guess 5 years ago was when I started with the board here. This is a very different board than what I was used to when it comes to healing arts, because the vast majority of the complaints that we get here, there's I don't want to say there's meat to them, but there is. They're saying this was a negligent act, basically in so many words, whereas my prior board, the vast majority of complaints were, they were rude, or, with the board I was with, my prescription was wrong, things where there's not, a lot of it is you can communicate with that practitioner and you can work that out, or, compliance issues, advertising issues. We just really don't get those here. Here, the vast majority of complaints we get are about, death, serious injury, and of course, being animals, there's a lot of passion behind that. So it's such a different world here, I think, at VMB in many ways compared to any other healing art board. Very much.
And I just want to clarify, these are based on allegations of what the complainant says. So anything related to the standard of care, when you look at these buckets, standard of care cases are when you look at what you're going to charge in a charging document, any standard of care deviations are negligence and incompetence. So anything dealing with the standard of care is going to have that potential violation of a negligence and incompetence if it's proven. But again, this is just allegations, and so I think might be helpful in the future too is after you had the allegations pie chart, what the actual result was, and have that breakdown by type to show you that there's this percentage resulted in discipline.
Thank you for both of you for explaining. And I also wanted to make sure that, like, really people are understanding, especially those who are listening in, the complexity of the process that you guys are dealing with. And, you know, with the challenges that you're having, I would say thank you so much for, you know, everything that you're doing.
Yeah. I mean, one of the other things I can add to that, too, is just, you know, speaking of another Healing Arts board, but the vast majority of complaints and investigations that we do here it does involve an expert. So we have a licensee, and that's why we're always looking for experts, and we'd like to get as many as we can. But, you know, it's not just staff saying, well, this looks like they're saying negligence here, but nah, it's probably fine. The vast majority, we have experts involved. Whereas at my other board, it was rare that we'd have to contract with an expert and have them provide a written opinion. So we do have that backing, and it definitely goes through many filters to make sure that we're on solid ground if we are going to take enforcement action, which is exceedingly rare. I think over 90% of the time, the case is getting closed without enforcement action. So we are definitely doing what's consistent and what's warranted for consumer protection.
Christy? I was just going to say that if you look at this, because this is a complaint received pie chart, many of the other ones, it's breaking down the other ones, and minimum standards, record keeping, and, you know, substance abuse, it's going to be, and then other convictions or discipline, general and professional conduct. Very rarely are we going to see somebody reporting somebody for or minimum standards and record keeping.
Right.
So I think when we look at that and say to ourselves, this is coming from, that's going to be an internal complaint, and those are hard to do. Those are usually, people are going to have to do an anonymous complaint, and so, you know, it should happen. We want people to complain if they see something, speak up, but it doesn't happen as often as it should.
Yeah, I think a lot of the minimum standard complaints that we receive are from staff members who either currently work there and they say, I want to be anonymous, or ones that have left and say, I don't care, I'll put my name on there because this place was a problem.
And so I think that's why those are smaller, and we forget that we're looking at something that those things are difficult to do. They should be done. We know it has to be done, but it's hard. And so I think that's why when we're looking at this, we have to say, okay, wait, take a step back. But we know that it needs to be done, and we need more people to speak out when it does happen. But it is hard.
Yeah, so this is actually what the subcommittee on the MDC is struggling with, which I'm no longer a part of, but have been working on, and you know, looking at this. The statute really is very specific about prioritizing negligence and incompetence related that causes death or serious bodily injury and poses a danger to the public. It's worded as allegations of, and so that prioritizes that as the top priority. So as we can see very clearly from this pie chart, that means that almost everything is top priority. And how is that helpful in any way? Like, that's not helpful to consumer protection to just have everything put in the same bucket, because that's 1,200 cases or 1,500 cases, you know, that's being put, or I guess it's 1,200 probably if we look at the percentages. And so then, you know, how do you say which ones of these really do need to get put on the, you know, the fast track? And it seems to me, working with the enforcement team, that you guys actually have done a really good job of picking out some of the really egregious things and being able to see that, but it still is a very difficult task. So that was one of the strategic planning objectives. I think it was a 1.4. but I think tomorrow we should think about how to improve on that even further, and the MDC is working on that. This is different, though, than what was provided to the MDC meeting, because the last pie chart, it was like 54%, or no, it was 54%, then it was down to like 36%, and unprofessional conduct was quite a bit more, and I think we were talking about that being probably from COVID, because people were...
Yeah, I think that was the prior
that was
fiscal years, 21,
Yeah,
22.
22, 23.
Yeah, so this is a new pie chart that's, again, only referencing the last quarter.
Okay.
So that's why it's different.
Great.
And once again, I think this, since we're only a quarter in, could probably shift wildly. I know that it did, I want to say 2 years ago, where we had a big percentage and then the pie chart kind of righted itself.
That's like what you're saying. So I just wanted to also mention about the subject matter expert webinar. Something that struck me was how some veterinarians are very comfortable with the idea of incremental care, and some of our experts were comfortable with the idea that if the client couldn't afford something or decline something, that it was okay to continue to use empirical therapy, and others felt, uncomfortable with that. I mean, I think it would be understandably, right? They're trying to do a good job. They're trying to protect the consumer. They don't want to miss something if it was a mistake, and maybe in their practice that would be considered a mistake. But if you look at the situation, and one of the case examples was, somebody who refused diagnostics, but needed a refill or something, and and there was such a variety of responses as to what people would do. So I feel like these training sessions are really helpful for that in particular, because they were able to talk about it and understand, and I think feel more comfortable when the cases aren't practicing the gold standard, but really are still delivering the standard of care, and so they were able to kind of talk through some of those issues. So I was really happy about that.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So with this trainings, the webinars, are we making sure that we're discussing the spectrum of care?
That's what I was talking about with the incremental care, spectrum of care. Maybe I'm using the wrong terminology.
But what I'm saying is that being introduced to the subject matter experts and having them kind of embrace, because I know that's part of the challenge that we have in the industry, where you have a significant number of practitioners that have been, I would say, the only way that they think of things would be the gold standard.
Yeah, that's what I was, I mustn't have been saying it very clearly, but that's what I was touching on, was that that discussion was had in this talk. There wasn't a specific presentation on it, and perhaps that's an idea for an upcoming training, but that in our case example that we gave, I guess that was last year, when we did the little test or quiz that we sent out.
Right.
I was the one that actually wrote that example, and I had like 3 examples, one, and it touched on that as well, where the person declined, testing, they couldn't afford it, the patient needed, continued phenobarbital, it ended up in liver failure, but they declined the test, and is that the veterinarian's fault? No, versus they didn't offer the tests, they didn't recommend the test, so there were all these different options and things. But we are really trying to get the message out that that I was calling it incremental, but standard of care. I think Jessica wants to say something, or do you want to say something first?
Well, I was going to say maybe I could reach out to Dr. Noyes with the Institute of Incremental Care and see if they have any examples or help. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Go. Say what you're saying.
Well, I think that would be really, really a good opportunity to see if they have some teaching tools or some other reference materials that would help us in the next webinar.
And if I may add, maybe it would be a good idea to continuously have the conversation, because it's a culture shift, and you can't just change it with, just a one-time training. It's something that needs to be embraced, and people being comfortable with the principles behind spectrum of care.
Jessica?
Yeah, I would say for last year, really talking to our subject matter experts, not only through the webinars about spectrum of care, but also when we get cases where they might call something a deviation from the standard of care, extreme deviation. We look at their rationale and we have questions about, is that really the standard of care, or was that the gold standard? And we'll have those conversations with them when they get the cases. Also, during the AAVSB meeting, you recall when Dr. Noyes provided that her presentation, I did get up and I let them know that we do have subject matter expert roundtables with them, and that's one of the things that we have been tackling with spectrum of care. And I invited her to partner with us and potentially come out and during those roundtables give a presentation on spectrum of care.
And does she have to do that in person, or can she?
It's virtual.
Yeah, so she could actually, let's see if we can get her to do that.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah. I think one of the other things that they do reinforce that maybe doesn't sometimes come naturally is that a practitioner shouldn't be pushed into, I think, going below the standard of care either, because the consumer is saying, well, I can't do this, I can't do this, so the practitioner is kind of compromising and say, well, I guess I won't do this. If it's not going to be the standard of care, then that's an issue too. So.
I had some more questions about the chart. I just didn't know if we were going to go over the chart further, or should we just go through the probation and then talk about that, or since I'm sorry, I'm apparently doing a bad job.
We can shift over probation and then to the chart, just kind of flow there. So I'll have Marlene go over probation.
Thank you.
Okay, for the probation update, we currently have 51 pending probation, or actually pending enforcement complaints from 22 probationers. There are 4 petitions for early termination of probation and 2 petitions for reinstatement pending with the probation unit. And we had 5 new licensees begin probation, and 5 completed their probation, 10 of which are told, and 51 total probationers. Any questions?
Just welcome, Marlene.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, we're very excited to have you, so thank you. Okay, so on the chart, I just had one question, which was, there's 2 columns or 2 groups. There's the cases closed with time frame to complete intake and investigations, and thank you for breaking this down. I think that was another improvement that's been done over the last couple of years, where you've separated out to kind of get a better idea of where some of the lag time is, or where there's some of the bottlenecks. So I think that's been helpful. But in any case, at the end of that, the bottom column says average number of days. The 2 bottom columns are the average number of days for all investigation outcomes and average number of days from receipt of complaint to referral for prosecution or case closure without referral. And here, our year to date right now is 858. Then there's another column, let's see here, so that was page 6. Page 7, number of days to complete AG cases. And at the bottom there, it's the average number of days to impose discipline 1,072, we'll just say for the year to date. Are we supposed to be adding those two numbers to get the total amount of time that it takes for a case that goes to the AG's office to actually close?
No, the number of days to complete AG cases is from the date that we get it to the date that the discipline is final.
Okay. Woo.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I was like, man, that's a long time. Okay, so that helps me understand that. Thank you. Nice job on, this feels like we have kind of hit the top of the hill and we're starting to like.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I mean, it just had continued to grow and grow and grow, and we were, even though cases were getting closed, they were piling on top, and now we're more and more seeing it come down, and I am just so excited about that. Like, this is huge, and I'm really happy with how that's going. I was wondering about the number of consultants. I saw it went down to 2. Didn't we have more than that when we first started? Were there like 5?
We did. Where do I have consultants to? Is it listed here?
Where did I read that? I'm sorry that I don't know where that was.
Yeah, because we have 1, 2. Yeah, we have 4. We have 4 right now.
Okay, I wonder.
So yeah, it went down from 5 to 4.
Yeah, maybe it was on the org chart. You're right. So, okay.
The org chart does say 2, but that could be, yeah.
Yeah, we need to update that. So it's 4.
Okay. Okay. So that was that question. And I was wondering, I think we've talked about this not briefly, but a long time ago, about flagging cases for the type of case, and especially as telemedicine is kind of coming online, and SB 669 with RVTs doing various tasks, which I think will end up going, some of them, if there's problems, going against the veterinarian, because the veterinarian's ultimately responsible, and those, I'd have to look at how that's written, but originally that was the intent. Is there a way to flag cases as equine, telemedicine, small animal, specialty, since we have breeds and all of this computerized stuff as it comes in, so that as time goes on, we may be able to have a better argument for beefing up regulations in certain areas, or changing regulations, or how we recruit for experts and so on?
I think there'd have to be either a drop-down or a change to an existing drop-down. Some of that stuff would have to be a custom field, but Jessica might be able to chime in on that too.
So it's possible to update the brief system and also look at updating the complaint form itself. That way the complainants are the ones entering the information. I would tell you we do have a change request into our complaint form in Breeze to differentiate telemedicine services versus the other methods of delivery of services. So that's already in there. But again, this is a good topic to include during the strategic planning session. An objective that you would like is to obtain more data about that information.
Great, okay. Lastly, I think that might be, nope, that was it. Those were all my questions. Anybody else with questions? I don't see any hands up. Public comment is not in the room. Moderator, please open it up online.
Certainly. If anyone has any questions about the enforcement report, you may look for the hand icon, click that to raise your hand, or you may look for the question mark icon, type the word comment into that text box, and click send. And each speaker will have 3 minutes with a 15-second warning. I do see a raised hand. Nancy Ehrlich, I will send your request to unmute your microphone. And again, you'll have 3 minutes. 1 sec. And you're unmuted.
My question is not on the enforcement report. It was on the exam and licensing. My question was, apparently there's been an increase in the applications for RVTs, but a decrease in the number of licenses, and that seems odd. I wonder if you have an explanation for that.
And I do believe that the licensing staff are not currently at the desk. I will defer to the board chair on whether to defer this question or request additional input from staff.
I'm sorry, we need to finish the public comment and then we can go from there. Thank you.
Certainly. All right. Thank you for your comment, your question. And then are there any other requests for comment on the enforcement report? All right. I do not see any other questions for the enforcement. Shall I close public comment?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so I'm looking at page 2 of the licensing report, and you have applications received, and you're looking at RVTs. It decreased from 21-22 to 22-23, but we don't have numbers for this year because it's not a full year, it's just the 3 months. When you look at licenses issued for RVTs, it is increasing, and the license population is still increasing. So I do see the minor decrease from 21-22 to 22-23, but I don't think those two data points are enough to indicate an issue of that there's a problem with a decrease in population, because we're not seeing a decrease in population or licenses issued. So I don't know what she's referring to.
Okay, thank you. Jeff, you're up. We're moving on to agenda item 16D, outreach.
Thank you, and I hope everyone's having a good morning.
Good morning.
So for the outreach report, I do want to just add a little star to the enforcement webinar. It is actually available on YouTube in case anybody wants to actually re-review it based on the questions. So it is out there for the public to see. Starting with the inspector recruitment in Kings and Fresno counties, we did send an email out to all interested parties, which included nearly 300 veterinarians and RVTs in those counties to try to recruit them for the board's hospital inspection program. They had to meet certain criteria, apply with us, and certain ones were selected for Kings County to get training on the inspection process. We are still looking for more inspectors for Fresno County. So if you're out there, please apply with the board. The next one is the MDC recruitment. We were encouraging RVTs in August and September to apply to the board for the MDC. We luckily had those 3 applicants yesterday, all very good and very highly recommended with their experience. And we were happy to have them available for you guys to select out of those 3 individuals. The next one is the Cures update. In September, the board informed its licensees that the Cures application login recovery screens will be updated with the DOJ, and it provided and distributed that to all our licensees, all our veterinarians. So they were encouraged to review that information just to make sure that they understood how to log in and the changes to the Cures system. The next one is the Verify a Veterinary License. We are starting a campaign working with the Office of Public Affairs to disseminate some of that information to the public with catchy phrases and things to kind of get them interested to double check the license before they actually get those veterinary services. We want to make sure that licensed individuals are actually providing these services to the public and not somebody off the street. So we are working with them to get that disseminated out to the public. And lastly, this whole week, every day, we've been posting information for the Vet Tech Week and how much they are greatly appreciated in California and how much dedication they provide to our California animals. They are instrumental in how we actually provide veterinary services, and we are proud of our RVTs for the services they do every single day. And with that, if you guys have any questions, I'm here to answer.
Great, thank you. I don't see any questions. Thank you. Public comment? None in the room. Moderator, would you open it up online, please?
Certainly. If anyone has any public comment on the outreach report, you may look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment in the text box and click send, or you can click the hand icon to raise your hand. Each speaker will have 3 minutes with a 15-second warning. Are there any comments on the outreach report? And I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
I just thought of something which was on the verifying a license. I wonder if we could partner with shelters and pet food stores, not us, but if, I don't know, where they could get like a QR code and a little sign like, you know, for
good idea,
where they could put the information up and then people could have the link to get to our website and verify a license. Like, I'm not, like, where would we get this information out? Sounds great.
Another thing we're looking at doing is changing the format of the actual license that individuals have to post and to add the QR code to that license that they're posting, because that right now the license that you're printing out and posting is just a point in time. And so to include the QR code to also show that they're up to date in their license.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, strategic plan, how exciting.
So just really quickly on this, there were more things that we were able to complete or at least initiate, one of them being the outreach campaign for the public, so that's been started. There's a couple items that were slated to be, because we had until the end of 2024 to complete. And so I think that we'll take those few items that have not been completed and carry them over to the next strat plan. So all of that will be discussed more tomorrow.
Great. Any questions? None here, none, no public in the room, but public comment in the room, none. Moderator, public comment online, please.
Certainly. If anyone has any public comment about the strategic plan, you can look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand, or you can look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment into the text box and click send. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. Any comments on the strategic plan? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're going to take a break, maybe a 15-minute break. We'll come back at 11:15. Thank you. Are we good online? Okay. Okay, great. So the next agenda item is agenda item 17, election of,
Can we just make sure that we have Diana Prado back? Ms. Prado, are you there?
We can wait a minute for her to...
there she is.
Okay, great. All right. Hello, welcome back. So yes, we're moving on to agenda item number 17, election of the board officers. Is there any discussion?
I would like to nominate Dr. Bradbury for a second term as a board president.
I second.
Oh.
Dr. Bradbury, do you accept the nomination?
I do, thank you. I feel like I'm blushing. Any more discussion? Okay, public comment? You sure? Yeah, come on. Okay, moderator, can you open it up to...
Can we do public comment online? Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Moderator, can you open it up to the public comment online, please?
Certainly. And if anyone has any comment on the nomination for board president, you can look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand, or you can look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment in the text box and click send. Are there any comments on the nomination for president? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Okay, I think it's a call for the vote.
Dr. Solocito?
Yes.
Dr. Grant?
Yes.
Dr. Noland?
Aye.
Ms. Pulaski?
Strongly yes.
Ms. Prado?
Yes.
Ms. Berber? Oh, sorry, she's no longer with us. Dr. Bradbury?
Yes.
Motion carries. Congratulations.
Thank you. Okay, so now it's vice president.
I'd like to make a nomination to continue Dr. Salcido as vice president.
Great.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Dr. Solocito, do you accept the nomination?
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry. We're very happy to, I'm happy to have her. Okay, any public comment? No? Moderator, would you open it up to online?
Certainly. Any public comment on the nomination of vice president? You may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand, or you may look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment, and click send. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. Any comments on the nomination for vice president? I see no requests for comment. Shall I close the comment feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Dr. Solocito?
Yes.
Dr. Grant?
Yes.
Dr. Noland?
Yes.
Ms. Pulaski?
Happily, yes.
Ms. Prado?
Yes.
Dr. Bradbury?
Yes.
Motion carries. Congratulations.
Yay. Okay, now to agenda item 18. I did tell her she had to be president after that, so. Agenda item 18, future agenda items and next meeting dates.
So we have, as far as regulations go, we have drug compounding coming back in January. We have the medical record keeping regulations coming back in January. We may have alternate premises rulemaking and Title 24, which is building code standards, coming to us in January. We're looking at revisiting the inspections mandate next year. We have the complaint prioritization potential legislative proposal coming in January, and then any other strategic planning objectives that we're going to decide on tomorrow. Future meeting dates, we have January 17th through 18th of 2024, and then you'll see on our website we have all 2024, 2025 meeting dates online. This was more due to being able to secure the hearing room, HQ1 hearing room. I wasn't able to get January of 2024 in the hearing room over there. We do have it is scheduled to be here. All other ones will be over there, with the caveat that if DCA throughout the next couple of years is able to do a hybrid type meeting in Southern California, then we would hopefully go down to Southern California. But until we're able to offer the same opportunities to participate, we're going to stick to the meeting locations here.
Dr. Nolan.
I would like to continue to keep Assembly Bill 1399 on our agenda and anything related to the implementation and issues with that bill. I think that's important that we keep that in the forefront, and perhaps even in having some sort of interaction with the CVMA, with their task force, to see if there's any way we can collaborate to help get the word out.
Okay, I don't see any other comments.
I'll just say thank you for getting all of the dates on the calendar. It's very helpful when planning vacations too, so thank you for putting all of those dates in the calendar.
Okay, great. Public comment in the room? Still none. Moderator, would you open it up to the online community?
Certainly. We've opened up public comment for either future agenda items or input on next meeting, upcoming meeting dates. If anyone would like to make a comment, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand, or look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment in the text box, and click send. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. Any comments on agenda items or meeting dates? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Dr. Nolan.
Well, I feel like it would be remiss not to include Senate Bill 669 in that. I meant to say both of them, so thank you.
Thanks. Dr. Grant.
Just a question. Does this preclude adding agenda items in the future, especially after the strategic planning meeting?
Yeah, not at all. This is always an ongoing thing, so if you have ideas now, you can share that. If you have ideas in between board meetings, you can share that, or the strategic planning session. We can add them at any time.
Thank you.
And right now is the time to add them if you have an idea. In terms of during the meeting, this is where if you have ideas and you want to talk about it.
I'd like to more in-depth discussion over the complex relationship between unlicensed practice and protecting consumer affairs, and also being advocates for veterinarians and the RVTs who are licensed. I think that there's a real problem there that I see, people, and also this strategic assessment of cases. I mean, it's very complex. People don't want to spend their money on getting the proper workup. They go to somebody else who's going to offer them an opinion. They're not doing a good job, and it ends up costing money in the future. And then the veterinarians are upset because someone's come in and tried to give some recommendation that's been expensive and not worthwhile. And we try to get involved and try to protect the veterinarians and the consumers. And to me, it's a real dilemma sometimes.
Yeah, I think we have to remember that our mission is really to focus on consumer protection, but obviously that's a huge consumer protection issue, and unlicensed practice, in my opinion, is I see it as a top priority. I think that's one of the things we've been discussing in the MDC subcommittee of case prioritization and adding unlicensed practice to the list of top priorities in the statute. There's some political things to consider when we're looking at trying to change a statute and whether we would be able to do that. But I'm not sure how to put that onto the agenda, but I think tomorrow we'll be talking more about we talked about in our last strategic planning meeting, the unlicensed practice, but I just want to remind you that while we obviously care about our licensees, the CVMA and the other veterinary medical associations are the ones that need to be the advocates and the protectors of the veterinarians and the RVTs for their interests, per se, and we are focused on the consumers and how that's affecting them and the animals. So I just caution the wording, if that makes sense.
And I say this, and I said it yesterday, and Ms. Gear can attest to this because we kind of said it, in that our goal is to protect the consumer and the pet. And I think that if we are always keeping that in mind, do what's right for the pet, do what's right for the consumer, and in turn, that will make it right for the profession. Because if we always do what's right for the pet and we're always doing right by the consumer, it makes the profession better. And so that's how we justify what we do, and that's why we make sure that we're always doing right here. And I think that's what we keep in mind in doing our strategic plan, and then I think that's where we use what you're talking about tomorrow for our strategic plan.
Dr. Nolan?
I know that this may make the staff nervous because it sounds like we have an awful lot on our plate, but I would like to consider, if not this next meeting, maybe the following meeting, inviting someone from the Spectrum of Care Initiative to present and to really bring that back to the forefront of a meeting for a period of time. And I'm happy to work on continuing our new relationship with them.
Great. And also, I wanted to just say one more thing about the protecting the veterinarians and all that. There is some level of consumer protection that, by keeping veterinarians in the practice and in California, we are protecting consumers because they have veterinarians to go to with their animals. So I do realize there is an aspect of consumer protection by trying to ensure that they want to stay in California and practice and so on. So I just want you to know I keep that in mind as well. Okay. I don't see any hands up. So public comments again? Oh, we've already done that. Okay. All right. So we just had a discussion afterwards. So, okay. So now we are at a point where we are going to be recessing open session. We'll be going into closed session, and then from here, we won't be coming back online, but we'll go ahead.
Yeah, so we're going to recess open session. The webcast and the webinar will be turned off, and I'm sorry, webcast and WebEx is what the words I was looking for. They will be turned off. We will reconvene in person in open session after closed session just to adjourn. But a webcast and WebEx will not be showing that. So that is all.
And then for Diana, we're going to have a separate WebEx for?
It's through Microsoft Teams. So Ms. Prado has provided a link in Microsoft Teams, and then we'll be doing it from here.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.